Donald Trump is very angry at Israel in the context of Iran's Qasem Soleimani's assassination, but he wouldn't say why. This is part of an interview with Israeli journalist Barak Ravid, who has just published his book, Trump's Peace, focusing on the Abraham Accords. Good evening, Barak.
Hi, Yaakov.
First, you know what? Let's take a listen. What did Trump tell you about Soleimani's assassination? Take a listen. Coming up. All right, here we have it. One second, and we'll have it.
I was very disappointed in Israel having to do with that event.
What do you mean?
I can't mention that now, but I was not happy with Israel.
During the killing of Soleimani?
Israel did not do the right thing. People will be hearing about that at the right time.
All right. So, Barak, any clue as to what he meant?
Yes. When I had this interview with former President Trump, it was our second interview. It was in a phone call in July. And I was really surprised that he said that, because I had no clue that there was any problem around the killing of Soleimani, because I think, and I'm sure you would agree, that in real time, it looked like the height of the Israeli-U.S. cooperation against Iran. But apparently, behind the scenes, in places that the general public and us journalists did not see, there was quite a big crisis. And at the beginning, when I started asking former Trump's staffers about this, I got the same answer, no comment, because I got the sense that there was something that they felt really uneasy about this event. And eventually I managed to find out what happened, at least in Trump's view. Apparently, Israel was involved in the killing of Soleimani, obviously, and Israeli officials confirmed that they contributed in intelligence on the whereabouts of Soleimani. But apparently Trump wanted Israel to have a much more active role. And that basically, if I can sum it up, that Israel will kill Soleimani, especially after there was this intelligence that allegedly said that Soleimani was planning attacks against American targets in the region. And at least what Trump understood at the time was that Netanyahu didn't want to do it and didn't want to that Israel will kill Soleimani. And Trump got upset, and he told his aides that Netanyahu was ready to fight Iran until the last American soldier, which is quite a statement by the U.S. president. And since that moment, I think that incident contributed a lot to the fallout between those two leaders in the last year of Trump in the Oval Office.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about this later also. But according to your interviews and various accounts, this peace accord, the Abraham Accord, was actually one breath away from not happening at all.
Yeah, exactly. They started negotiating the Abraham Accords on July 2nd, after it was clear to Netanyahu that his annexation fantasies in the West Bank are blocked by the Trump administration. And then the UAE came with this idea of, instead of annexing parts of the West Bank, let's normalize relations. And they started negotiating, and on July 26th, basically they had a deal. And they needed another 2 weeks for logistics and consultations in each country. And then they set a date for the call between the three leaders, between Trump, Netanyahu, and Mohammed bin Zayed. They set it for August 13th, 2020. And then on August 12th, 24 hours before, when everything is set and ready, the Israeli ambassador in Washington, Ron Dermer, calls the White House. And he tells Avi Berkowitz, the White House envoy to the Middle East, that Netanyahu doesn't want to sign the deal. And he tells them, listen, there's this domestic political issue in Israel. The budget is not going to pass. Netanyahu decided to go for elections. Therefore, he's not going to do it. Partially, and Dermer didn't say it, but the reason was that if there are elections, Netanyahu cannot give up on the annexation. That was his main bargaining chip in his election campaign for one election campaign after the other. And when the White House hears this, they basically freak out and they get angry. And the U.S. ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, who at the time was already in the White House waiting for the announcement, calls the prime minister's office in Jerusalem and shouts at Netanyahu's people. And he tells them, listen, this is happening tomorrow. You have no choice. You can't go back. And then he calls Dermer and tells him, Ron, tomorrow, 12 p.m. Washington time, be on the phone line because this phone call is happening. You can't go back. That's it. And then Netanyahu understands after a few hours that he has to do it and he can't backtrack. But for several hours, it looked like Netanyahu is about to pull the plug on the whole deal.
Yeah, what a drama. Now, let's talk about the other side, the Emiratis. What drove them to push ahead, to go ahead? It wasn't easy for them, but they did it anyway.
Yeah, and I think that maybe the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, Mohammed bin Zayed, is the unsung hero of the Abraham Accords. That's at least my conclusion. Because basically when we got to the end of June 2020, the U.S. and Israel were on a collision course because Netanyahu wanted annexation, the White House didn't want annexation, and they didn't know how to get out of this. And basically Mohammed bin Zayed, who wanted to normalize relations with Israel for a long time, was just looking for the right timing. He also didn't want annexation because this would kill the two-state solution and would make normalization with Israel impossible and therefore would harm the UAE's interests. He decided to bring this ladder in the form of a normalization agreement with Israel in order to take both Trump and Netanyahu off the tree and turn this huge international crisis into a historic breakthrough.
Right. And there's also, of course, the peace process with the Palestinians, so-called the deal of the century, which Trump wanted very much. But now, speaking to you, he blames Netanyahu for not willing to go ahead. Is that possible?
Yes. I think that, I asked Trump, if that's what you think, if you think that the Palestinian President Abbas was more forthcoming than Netanyahu, why did you give all those presents to Netanyahu and gave the stick to Abbas? And he said that in retrospect, he was told by his staff and for a very long time that the Israelis are the ones who want peace and that the Palestinians are the obstructionists and rejectionists. And while he was in office, he realized that it wasn't the case and that basically Netanyahu didn't really want a deal. And when Trump introduced his deal of the century in January 2020, he was launching it then because he was getting ready for a possible second term. And he wanted to start laying the ground and mobilize international support for his deal. And when Netanyahu came to the White House and started talking about annexation at the ceremony, Trump suddenly realized that for Netanyahu, he didn't care about any peace deal. He just wanted to go for a land grab in the West Bank. And as Trump told me, he got angry and he stopped it.
Yeah, he got angry many times during your interview.
Exactly.
Barak Ravid, thank you very much. Good luck with the new book.
Thank you, Yaakov.
See you again.